Afternoon, everybody. It's Ryan Jenkins with Jenkins Farms here. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Steve Brown from the fine University of Auburn, located in Auburn, Alabama.
Yep.
And Mr. Steve's going to talk to us today about how he ended up where he is in his career and kind of what it took to get there. And who knows, he has all kind of good stories. We may end up with some other careers before we finish. So, Mr. Steve, you want to kind of tell them
Sure.
who you are and what you do and how you got there?
Currently, I'm an extension agronomist at Auburn University. I work on cotton. I've been there actually 2 years, and prior to that, for 10 years, I worked for a global cotton seed and technology company, and then prior to that, 21 years, I worked for the University of Georgia as an extension agronomist and then as a weed scientist. And I did one of my graduate degrees at Auburn and worked for Auburn as a county extension agent for a while, and then did weed science research for Auburn, and then got a PhD at Texas A&M. But I brought this book today, and this is a book that I received sometime in 1973 from an aunt who lived in rural East Mississippi. She lived on a very small farm, and she sent me this book. And I was thinking I was going to go to Auburn, but I didn't know what I was going to do when I grow up, and I'm still kind of wondering.
Right.
But she sent this book to me. This is a Reader's Digest condensed version of a book called All Creatures Great and Small, and it focuses on a veterinarian set in Great Britain in the 1930s and 1940s. And that really spurred me to think, hey, that's something I could do. I could work with my mind, work with my hands, and work outside and really make a contribution. And so that kind of got me to Auburn. And then I got to Auburn. I said, well, I don't know that I want to go to school all my life. And so I gravitated. A friend of mine from high school had enrolled in agronomy, and I thought, what is that? And basically it's crop science. And so I got into that, and some doors opened after graduation. But I grew up in Dothan and didn't grow up on a farm, but I had a yearning, and still do, to be involved in issues about producing stuff, really
Right.
producing and growing stuff. And that's the kind of, now I'm almost 65, and it's been a wonderful career to work in agriculture. And again, I use my mind, I get out in the field, I use my hands, I crawl around on the ground sometimes, so looking at things.
So kind of you were went from I don't know
Yeah, that's
to
true.
I want to be a veterinarian.
Yeah, and then I said, I probably can't be a veterinarian. So, yeah.
Didn't want all the years of
Yeah,
school that
yeah,
it took. You were ready to get out and get
Right.
a job.
Right,
And then an extension agent.
right. And I focused initially in cotton in North Alabama, and I learned so much from the farmers I worked with and some other extension, the true extension specialists, the weed scientists, and some agronomists and entomologists were there, and they taught me a whole lot. So in a short time, I learned quite a bit beyond the college days.
And then when you worked at the what'd you call it? I suppose it was Phytogen or Stoneville or
I
DPL
worked for
company.
what now is Corteva AgriScience,
Okay.
and I worked in the Phytogen cotton seed business, and of course our product there was delivering cotton varieties and cotton technology to growers across the southeast. And I actually came through this part, or covered this part of the world for a couple of years, but I represented that in Georgia primarily, but then I bled over in Alabama some.
So you've you've covered several occupations here in just a few minutes. What degrees do you have?
I got BS in agronomy at Auburn, and then I got a master's in agronomy at Auburn, but it was really my focus on my master's degree, and then was weed science. But I worked on a broad area of cotton, no-till cotton production issues in North Alabama. And then I left Auburn and went to Texas A&M and got a PhD there, again, and focused on weed science, and I worked in various cotton projects there too. So,
how did you start initially? This is not so much for them,
Sure,
but for me.
sure.
How did you kind of get honed in on you wanted to fool with cotton? You wanted to work with cotton?
well, I got at the end of my bachelor's degree, and what am I going to do? And I looked for a job. I had one time thought maybe I'll take up an ag degree, because it's about producing things, and maybe I could be a missionary or something. But I got to the end of my BS training, and I said, well, I'll look for jobs, and I interviewed with a coal company. They were reclaiming land. I interviewed with some basic ag chem companies, and they didn't particularly think I fitted in sales, which was probably right. And then I interviewed with the Auburn Extension System, and they had a cotton job in North Alabama, and it was a tremendous opportunity for me. And I didn't know that door as I was stepping through it, what I would learn, and here 40-something years later, I'm still working on cotton, and it really provided a foundation. But again, you got to get through the door once you get that degree or whatever, and find a place, and then you don't know what'll open thereafter.
I think that's kind of, for me, a reason I want to do this series is for the kids to see. You don't always know when you're starting. You know your end result is you need a career. Yeah. That's the only given. That's the only part that you know is I've got to find a career. But then the book led to I'm going to go to Auburn and be a veterinarian, and then once you're there, you were exposed to other things, other doors opened, and every time. The moral to the story was you were continuing to move forward. You always were working, trying to better yourself, but consistently throughout your story here, doors have opened because you've been exposed to somebody or met somebody or done something that you would have not done had you not been as much of a go-getter or trying or.
And I got near the end of my career with industry, and I knew I was going to retire. But my family said, you can't retire, you need to die in a cotton field. So then the opportunity for an extension agronomist in cotton opened at Auburn University, and I had done that for 20 plus years at the University of Georgia, and I thought this is the ideal place. My wife and I both loved Auburn, and two of my sons went to Auburn. And so I'm the oldest assistant professor on campus probably.
Really?
But I've been here almost 2 years now, and there's always frustrations and satisfactions in both sides and jobs, and I've certainly found that. It's been a good 2 years, and I look forward to more time in the cotton field.
So you're talking about so you're part of the extension program.
Correct.
So you work for Auburn University is that your only employer? How does that work?
Well, it's called the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, and so, but I also have a 25% research appointment at Auburn University. So in fact, earlier today, we were a few miles away at one of our research stations looking at a cover crop study, and just evaluating that. So yeah, that's my sole employment now.
Wow. So it would be fair to say we interviewed Libby Johnson.
Right.
She's an extension agent here in Florida, but same thing. If an extension agent finds a problem in a cotton field or has a question that they can't figure out or they can't answer, I guess the way it works is they go to you. You're the specialist, and then you help them find the answer.
My goal is to be a resource person for whomever, whether it's the extension agent, whether it's the farmer, whether it's ag industry. And of course, if you encounter a problem where I may not know it either, but we can talk about it and think through it. And so, yeah, I'm a technical resource person as I see it. And I do agronomic issues, but I've been doing it long enough that I know a lot about a lot of things. Maybe don't know enough about everything, but I'm still learning. That's something I hope any young person approaches life and their work, that they'll continue to learn and grow throughout their career.
So if somebody wanted to get to the point where you are now, obviously it would take years to do, but what majors, what schooling, what would they, maybe not the exact job you have, but that type of a job, what kind of programs would they look, what kind of school would they want to attend, and then, after that, how easy will it be for somebody to find a job in a profession like yours, and things like that?
Well, the land-grant institutions, which in our neighborhood, of course, University of Florida, Auburn University, Mississippi State, Clemson, University of Tennessee, they're all going to have various disciplines of agriculture, agronomy or crop and soil science, entomology, plant pathology, those sorts of things. And you got to have the first ticket to get in the door, and maybe that's the first step for most people to figure out. All right, what can I do with this? If from the get-go they said, well, I want to be a researcher in a company, or I want to be a teacher and a researcher in a major university, then they're probably going to have to pursue a PhD, and they would get an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, and it would probably behoove them to go to a different institution to pursue the further advanced degree. And just because you learn new things and new ways and see new ways of doing things, and you're probably going to get some greater exposure in terms of coursework. But I didn't start out that way because I said I don't want to go to school all my life. But as I worked, and I had opportunity to work with an extension scientist, and I was kind of his right-hand man in terms of plot work and so forth, I realized, hey, I'd love to do that. And I was single and free of debt, and so I said, well, I can go on and get further training. And of course, today we pay our graduate students some, and they don't get rich, but they maybe can have hot dogs every now and then. So anyway, long road, but I wouldn't. Looking back, it's been amazing to watch the trail and to figure how things work out.
That's right. So it'd be, if somebody had your training, it would be fairly easy to find a job, do you think? Or probably what will happen is somewhere along the way, somebody's going to see what you bring to the table and may help open a door.
There are jobs in industry. There are jobs in the university. There are jobs in more federal type institutions. So you never know. But I would think we're kind of going through a lull with the pandemic. Everybody's economically, we're kind of tightened down. But I think, I mean, we're always going to grow stuff. We're always going to grow crops and deliver those. So. For somebody that knows something, that you truly know something, you can communicate with people and get along with people, and are willing to learn, I think you always find some opportunities.
That's right. What about, I think you probably touched on it some, but something I've also been trying, I feel like when you're starting, when you have no idea what you want to do in life and you're trying to figure it out, I think one of the first things, some of the first few things, like, do I like to talk to people or I don't like to talk to people? Do I like to work inside the office? Do I like to work outside the office? So what would an average week in your life look like to people?
Ideally, my phone's going to be ringing with, hey, Farmer Jenkins has this issue and I can help him. Or an ag dealer says, well, hey, what about this problem or what? And hopefully I'd be answering questions. And that's, to me, the role of an extension person, is to be that resource person, to deal with issues, to deal with uncertainties out there. And then also, since I have some research appointment and responsibility, I'm going to be with students, putting out plots and evaluating results in the various stations and sometimes on farm across the state of Alabama. And I've dealt with Livy as well. So we exchange information. She actually has come to our way, and we shot a video this past fall about defoliation, but with your hurricane defoliated the crop.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't have to worry about that.
So anyway.
All right. Well, very good. Anything else you'd like to tell them? I mean, you're quite a success story. So.
Well, I've had a wonderful career. I'm not done yet. But I appreciate you as a farmer and your willingness and interest in communicating and being a voice for agriculture. I think it's great.
Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.